Hey, greetings of the day. This is Subramanian Balagopalan with yet another interesting video. In fact, it is the same video that I published yesterday regarding a relative of mine who recently underwent a complex, like 4-hour surgery. And obviously, the previous video that I published yesterday was using Greek techniques of primary directions, distribution through the bounds, solar revolutions to analyze this event, and that continues to be my hot favorite, and I would say the most reliable and repeatable framework of techniques when it comes to event prediction without too many complex concepts, except for the fact that one needs to understand primary directions as a broad concept. Having said that, I thought, many of my subscribers are also those who are pretty well versed in the Hindu or Indian astrology, and I thought, let me make the same video, however analyzing it in the backdrop of Indian astrology techniques, right? So hope many of the other viewers will like this piece. And as I said, this is one of the many ways of analyzing the event. So without getting into too much detail, again, in case some of my subscribers have not seen the previous video that I published yesterday, this chart I am using to analyze a surgery event, basically an unpleasant event. And typically whenever one experiences an unpleasant event, you will have the involvement of 6th house, 8th house, 12th house, their respective lords. Somewhere they will have a strong influence, otherwise it's not possible for such an event to occur. And I am analyzing this using three levels of the standard tried, tested, accepted, practiced Vimshottari Dasha system. So, and of course I use Arudapada, and needless to say, I calculate Arudapadas differently. I use exceptions, and I also use it as part of my predictive framework, which you will see in this particular video. So with that background, uh, let me directly dive into the chart. So this is a relative of mine recently, couple of weeks back, underwent a major, I would say, leg surgery, and oh my god, and this happened during the, I would say, Rahu Venus Jupiter Dasha. Just a minute, right? This happened during the Rahu Venus Jupiter Dasha. So Rahu Dasha, Venus Bhukti, and Jupiter Antara. Now, since we are talking about a narrower period, right? This happened around the 6th of July. So, yes, I will quickly talk about Rahu as the main dasha and how it pretty much gives signals regarding unpleasant events. So, if you see, Rahu is conjunct Saturn, right? Rahu is conjunct Saturn, and Saturn happens to be the eighth lord of the horoscope. So Rahu is configured with the eighth lord as well as a natural malefic Saturn, right? So Rahu Dasha obviously is not looking very smooth, right? Another way of looking at it, because many astrologers say that Rahu gives the result of the sign lord and also the nakshatra lord. I mean, it's nakshatra lord. So Rahu is placed in the sign of Leo, and then Sun happens to be the sign lord. And in this case, coincidentally, Sun also happens to be the lord of Uttara Falguni nakshatra, and hence Sun Rahu Dasha. You can also consider that it will end up giving the results of Sun. Now look at Sun. Sun is posited in the 8th house of the horoscope, and it is like tightly conjunct Mars. And what is Mars? Mars is the 6th lord, right? So Rahu being conjunct with 8th lord Saturn, the dispositor of Rahu or the nakshatra lord of Rahu, Sun, was posited in the 8th house, conjunct Mars, which is the 6th lord. So this gives you enough, I would say, some bit of confidence that yes, the Rahu Dasha is not going to be a very smooth one, apart from the fact that Rahu in general is also considered as a malefic, as per the many of the Indian astrologers. I mean, the nodes are not typically considered very good planets, right? Typically, again, don't hold me onto this statement. So Okay, so I think this was enough testimony that Rahu is not going to be very helpful. Next is, if you see Rahu Dasha, let us look at the real planets that matter now. We're talking about Venus, Bhukti, Jupiter, Antara. So now all our focus will be on Venus and Jupiter, right? I'm just rubbing it. Okay, now let's look at Venus. Venus is placed in the sixth house from the Lagna. Sixth house from the Lagna. Venus is posited in the sixth house. So obviously, it's not very helpful position, right? Venus is posited in the sixth house, right? Now let us calculate the pad of Venus. And again, for those who are not very familiar or well versed with the concept of Ardhapada, please refer to my initial videos that I have published on my channel. It talks about how to go about calculating the Ardhapada. So now Venus is in the sign of Scorpio. If I have to calculate the pad of Venus, the Lord of Scorpio Mars is 3 houses away. So 1, 2, 3. So from here another 3. 1, 2, 3. So the pad of Venus, right, which is basically the sixth house pad. The pad of Venus actually lands in Pisces. And to make things easy, in fact, I'm very thankful to Mr. Ehsan Khazani, who was kind enough to accommodate all these calculations in his software. So if you see, already it is showing it. Right. So I have the Arudhapadas calculated, and this is considering all the exceptions that I use. Again, you can go through that video. Right. Most of the softwares don't calculate it correctly. Even the ones that have exceptions are not calculating it correctly. Let me be very sure, and this is not my opinion. I'm quite clear that it is not computed correctly, especially the exceptions. Right. So the sign Pisces is identical with A6. The sign Pisces is also identical with A8. And how do you calculate A8? Again, you have the sign A8 is identical, the 8th house is identical with Capricorn. So you count till you reach Saturn, which is the Lord of Capricorn. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then again another 8 from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is A8. Now what I want to say that A6 and A8 are identical with Pisces, which basically means Jupiter, because Jupiter is the natural lord of Pisces, is the lord of A6 and A8. So Jupiter has 6th and 8th house influences. So although it's a natural benefic, again, going by the Hindu astrology principles, Jupiter also has force fields or currents of 6th and 8th house, because it's the lord of A6. It also happens to be the lord of A8, because both of them fall in the sign of Pisces. Right? So as I said, now let's go back to Venus. Venus is in the sixth house. The path of Venus falls in Pisces, which is identical with A6 and A8. Venus is also aspected by Jupiter, the fifth aspect of Jupiter. Apart from the benefic part, Jupiter being a natural benefic, it is also carrying the A6 and A8, 6th house and 8th house currents. So Venus being in the sixth house, aspected by Lord of A6 and Lord of A8, definitely does not give us a very, I would say, healthy kind of configuration, right? Am I right? I mean, are you getting it? Right? Okay. Now, let us look at the Antara. Antara is Jupiter. So, as I said, Rahu Dasha, Venus Bhukti, Jupiter Antara. Needless to say, right? Jupiter is identical with it's the lord of A6, lord of A8. So even Jupiter in this way is not very I would say helpful here. In fact, it is carrying force fields of 6th and 8th house, and 6th house is all related to illness, hospitalization, surgery. 8th house is also similar, maybe heightened, something like more. If you don't take care, it could make the matters worse, serious, death like, anxiety, and all kinds of significations, right? So and apart from that, remember Jupiter is also in the 12th house from Moon. So remember, you just don't consider Jupiter position from the Lagna, you'll also consider Moon, and Jupiter is placed in the 12th house of Moon. Of course, it is exalted and being a benefic. The surgery went well because Jupiter is exalted, and even in transit right now, you have transit Jupiter also in the sign of Cancer. Okay, so I think this is. I hope you found this quite insightful. I also wanted to bring one more point. Let us look at the transit positions. So remember, transit positions, you should consider them from the Lagna as well as from the moon. Now, at the moment, as we speak, transit Saturn is in Pisces, transit Jupiter is in Cancer. Now, look at, as I said, you should consider transits from both Lagna and the moon. That is the third reference point, but right now I am not getting into those secrets. If you consider moon as the reference, matlab Chandra Lagna, transit Saturn is in the 8th house from the moon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And remember, the 8th lord from the moon is again Jupiter. So transit Jupiter is on natal Jupiter, which is actually the 8th lord from the Chandra Lagna, or 8th lord from the moon. So transit Saturn is in the 8th house from the moon. Transit Jupiter is on the 8th lord from the moon. Both transit Jupiter and transit Saturn are influencing 8th house matters from the moon. And moon is also the significator of body. Remember, it is for short travel and mind and mother, but remember, moon is also the significator of body. Let's not disregard this. And hence, you see, even the transits are showing a strong 8th house influence, and 8th house is also again related to, I would say, heightened 6th house in terms of surgery and all kinds of and I would say also chronic issues. In this case, this particular issue has been, I mean, he has been facing this for a long time, so it's sort of a chronic kind of event or ailment for which the surgery had to be done. So this is how you would analyze the same event using Indian astrology. And I mean, if you see, if I have to compare and contrast, in the previous video, in the Greek method, you very clearly see Mars and Saturn as natural malefics playing a very I would say strong role in that event when you look at it in the solar return chart. In Indian astrology right now, if I confine myself only to the natal chart, I'm not looking into D6 D8 divisional charts, but just for information, in the D6 chart, Venus continues to be in the 6th house. In the D8 chart, I think Venus was in the 8th house. So Venus continues to be afflicted in the divisional charts as well. But I'm not even getting into that level of complexity. Just by using the natal chart, using Aruda, you will be able to get a fair idea that this particular sub period is not going to be very beneficial. And although Jupiter looks very strong in the natal chart with being exalted in the 2nd house, remember, it also has force fields of 6th and 8th house, and that is what has actually caused the surgery during the Jupiter Antara. Although Jupiter looks benefic, but being a natural benefic, it has also ensured that the surgery is successful. So I hope this was insightful. As I said, there are many ways of looking at this, but this is one of the many ways, and I strongly believe that one should start trying to look at horoscopes from this angle as well. With that, this is Subramanian signing off. Continue to have a great weekend. Bye.